I'd always been a skeptic when it came to online dating, but loneliness has a way of changing even the most stubborn minds. After years of hearing success stories from friends who found love through dating apps, I finally caved in and decided to give Tinder a try. Little did I know that my first experience would be something straight out of a horror movie. It all began when I matched with a guy named Mark. He had a charming smile in his profile picture, and his bio suggested he was an avid hiker, just like me. We hit it off immediately, chatting late into the night about our favorite trails, our dreams, and our deepest fears. Mark seemed like a genuinely nice guy, and I couldn't help but feel lucky to have found him. We decided to meet up for our first date at a local coffee shop, a safe and well-lit place. Or so I thought. The day finally arrived, and my excitement was mixed with nervousness. I arrived at the coffee shop early, sitting near the window, sipping on a latte to calm my nerves. I watched as people passed by on the busy street outside, my heart pounding with anticipation. And then Mark walked in. He looked just like his pictures, and his smile was just as charming in person. We exchanged pleasantries, and as we talked, I felt myself relax. Mark was even more interesting and witty in person, and I couldn't help but be drawn to him. As the conversation flowed, Mark suggested we go for a walk in a nearby park. I agreed, thinking it would be a nice way to continue our date and get some fresh air. Little did I know that this decision would lead me down a path I could never have imagined. We arrived at the park, and it was eerily quiet. The sun was setting, casting long shadows over the trees, and making the place feel more desolate than peaceful. I should have taken this as a warning sign, but I was too entranced by Mark's company to pay much attention. We strolled along a narrow path, the crunch of leaves underfoot, and the distant chirping of crickets the only sounds in the fading light. The atmosphere grew more unsettling with each step, and I began to feel a knot of unease in my stomach. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. As we walked, Mark started to talk about his past relationships. At first, it was just the usual dating stories, but then he began to divulge more intimate details. Things I felt uncomfortable hearing on a first date. He spoke about his ex-girlfriends with a hint of bitterness, and the way he described them sent chills down my spine. It was as if he held on to grudges long after the relationships had ended, and I couldn't help but wonder if I would end up as one of those stories someday. My unease grew, but I didn't want to be rude or judgmental, so I tried to steer the conversation to lighter topics. That's when Mark abruptly stopped walking and turned to face me, his eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that sent a shiver down my spine. "You know," he said in a low, almost whispering voice, "I've always been drawn to people like you." I felt a wave of panic wash over me. His words sounded like something out of a horror movie, and I suddenly realized just how isolated we were in that darkening park. I tried to take a step back, but Mark's hand shot out, gripping my arm with a strength that took me by surprise. "Where do you think you're going?" he said, his tone now cold and menacing. I tried to pull away, but his grip only tightened. Panic surged through me as I realized that I was in real danger. I struggled to free myself, but Mark's hold was relentless. "Let go of me," I shouted, my voice quivering with fear. Mark's eyes seemed to darken, and a sinister smile twisted his lips. "You shouldn't have come here with me," he hissed. With all the strength I could muster, I twisted my arm and managed to break free from his grasp. I didn't look back. I just ran as fast as my trembling legs could carry me. Behind me, I could hear Mark's footsteps chasing after me, and the sound of his heavy breathing only fueled my terror. I burst out of the park, tears streaming down my face, and didn't stop until I reached a brightly lit convenience store. I begged the cashier to call the police, and when they arrived, I gave them a detailed description of Mark. They searched the park, but there was no sign of him. The police assured me they would do everything they could to find him, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he had vanished into thin air. Weeks passed, and I lived in constant fear, looking over my shoulder wherever I went. I changed my locks, deleted my dating apps, and tried to put the horrifying experience behind me. But it haunted my dreams, and the feeling of Mark's cold grip on my arm remained etched in my memory. Then, one night, as I lay in bed, I received a text message from an unknown number. My heart raced as I opened it, fearing the worst. The message simply read, "I found you." Panic surged through me once again, and I immediately called the police. They traced the number to an unregistered burner phone, and there was little they could do to track down the sender. Over the following weeks, I received more chilling messages. They were filled with threats and references to our date in the park. It was clear that Mark was still out there, watching, waiting. I lived in a constant state of fear, always looking over my shoulder, always wondering when he would strike. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, and my life had become a never-ending nightmare. Then, one evening, as I returned home from work, I found a package waiting for me on my doorstep. My hands shook as I opened it, revealing a blood-stained knife and a note that simply read, "You can't hide forever." I called the police once again, but there was little they could do. The evidence was circumstantial, and Mark remained a ghostly presence, tormenting me from the shadows. I knew I couldn't go on like this, constantly living in fear. I made the difficult decision to move to a new city, change my identity, and start over. It was a painful process, but I felt it was the only way to escape Mark's relentless pursuit. As I settled into my new life, I couldn't help but wonder about the true identity of the man I had met on Tinder. What had driven him to such madness? And would he ever find me again? To this day, I live with the knowledge that Mark could still be out there, lurking in the darkness, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Online dating had opened a door to a nightmare I could never have imagined, one that continues to haunt my every waking moment. So, to anyone considering venturing into the world of online dating, be cautious. You never know who might be lurking behind that charming smile, and the horrors that await in the digital realm can be far more terrifying than anything you could ever imagine.